Hello, everybody. My name is John Midbow. I'm with Scalability Experts. I wanted to lead off this webinar today, first by thanking everyone for attending. Today's webinar is titled Save Your IT Budget by Migrating to SQL Server 2012, and it is presented by Sharon Bajelitic, who is one of our database architects here at Scalability Experts. Sharon spends a great deal of time working directly with customers to help them optimize their data platforms and reduce their total costs. One way we have had a lot of success with doing this is by helping customers migrate off expensive and in some cases underperforming data platforms onto SQL Server 2012. Today Sharon will be sharing her thoughts as to why so many smart businesses are moving off Oracle and onto SQL Server, as well as providing a closer look at our approach, technique, and strategies for making this possible. At the end of the presentation, we will discuss some of the programs we have in place that can provide no-cost and low-cost migration assessments, and we should also have a few minutes available for Q&A at the end. So without further ado, and to ensure we have time, I'd like to introduce Sharon. Sharon, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. So first off, I hope everybody's warm out there. My name is Sharon Bajelitic, and I'm an architect with Scalability Experts. I've been working with SQL Server since it came out on OS 2, and my main area of expertise and experience is around large enterprise systems, scalability, architecture, design, performance, and then large-scale migrations as well from Oracle, DB2, Sybase, etc. to SQL Server. Today we're going to talk about Scalability Experts, what we do, who we are, some common issues that customers come to us with Oracle implementations, what are some of the business and technology reasons to migrate off of Oracle, and then we're going to take a look in depth at a case study for an assessment and a migration that we just completed for the Kentucky Cabinet of Health and Family Services. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of our other offerings. So what are our expertise and capabilities? Scalability Experts are known experts in data management, and that includes everything that has to do with data. That's business intelligence, migration, upgrades, consolidations, performance and scalability. We also do a lot now in platform modernization because a lot of our customers are coming to us wanting to run SQL on virtualized systems, and this tends to be the most common scenario right now. So how do you do that? So we have mission platform modernization services, BI, virtualization, PDW, which is parallel data warehouse, and then obviously we're also doing stuff in cloud computing, both private and public implementations. And we have some proven methodologies and tools that we've created, some for Microsoft, some for ourselves. We also have offices then in the U.S., Dubai, Mumbai, and Singapore, which gives us global deployment capabilities, and this is something that a lot of our competitors don't have. We have gold competencies for Microsoft on data platform, BI, and system management and virtualization, and we have very good close relationships with some important hardware vendors, including HP, Cisco, and Intel. We've been honored for 2 years in a row now as Microsoft's Outstanding Partner of the Year, last year for PDW and Big Data, and this year for private cloud and virtualization. And you'll see that we have a lot of areas that we focus in for solutions, broken down into 5 main areas. There's business intelligence. That's everything, again, around data. That's business intelligence. That includes OLAP, PDW, reporting services, dashboards, proof of concepts, and then migrations around BI. Performance management, this is something we've been doing for many, many years. Scalability analysis, architecture and design for large-scale systems, performance tuning, reference architecture. We also then started this platform optimization service a couple years ago. This is about upgrades, consolidation, and again, virtualization and how to create private clouds, and then cloud-based computing, and we also do strategic resourcing. And this gives us end-to-end design and what we call scale-fast implementation. As you can see, we're recognized leaders in our area, and we have been for a long time. And we have a very long and deep relationship with Microsoft, as you can see. Lots of awards, lots of partnerships, and a lot of us actually came from Microsoft directly. So for fiscal year 14, these are the areas that we intend to focus in. We have this database as a service, which again is one of our newer offerings, and it's around modernizing and automating the data center. That's consolidation, virtualization, and automation. So that's scripts, consulting tools for this, focused a lot on System Center, Hyper-V, and SQL 2012. And again, right now we find that customers, when they talk about SQL Server, they're also talking about virtualization. So these have to go out hand in hand. We have a big service practice in PDW that's really growing around big data, parallel data warehouse, and also some Hadoop that's now being offered with PDW version 2. We do BI, predictive analytics. Predictive analytics has kind of been on everyone's tongues for a while, and so this year we're going to grow that service even more. And then we continue on with our upgrades, compete migrations, consolidations, performance and optimization practice. So what are some of the challenges that customers come to us with regarding finding the right database server? And the big thing is there's sort of this feeling out there that low cost or cost-effective solutions don't provide the reliability and performance of an enterprise. And this is kind of an urban myth that's been around for a long time. It used to be true. It hasn't been true for 4 or 5 years. And so again, there's this feeling that for big enterprise systems, high-performing, reliable systems, you have to use really big hardware and Oracle. But that's not the case. And it hasn't actually been the case for a while, and it's really true with SQL Server 2012. And one of the great things about SQL Server 2012 is that there's a whole spectrum of products available for lightweight databases all the way up to the most challenging, largest systems that you might find. So kind of an idea of, to put this in perspective, a typical current enterprise database system that was based on Oracle on a Sun platform could cost upwards from $2 million and have a yearly maintenance cost of around $7,000 per database. On the other hand, a standards-based solution like SQL Server on the HP ProLiant DL980 would cost you only about $220,000 in server licenses and $1,600 per database to maintain. Now, these numbers are from a white paper, a joint white paper that we produced with HP, specifically addressing this this issue. This is some of the top Oracle triggers for migration that customers report, identified from Crimson Consulting, and rising maintenance costs, licensing issues, and some auditing tactics that customers are a little bit uncomfortable with, support issues, bugs, uptime, security, and then platform capabilities, and then Oracle's announcement of a discontinuation of support for Itanium. But I actually really want to say that if we could kind of boil it down to what customers tell us, they feel that with Oracle, they work the product more than they get to work their business. And that's the end TCO line. So with SQL Server, they feel that their time and energy and resources are spent more on working the business, not working the product. So we feel a better platform is the Windows and Intel platform, a way to reduce costs without sacrificing security, reliance, and performance. And there's many, many benchmarks out there that shows this. It's a reliable enterprise platform that can cost 5 times less than Oracle and Sun, and 7 times less costly to maintain. So we feel that organizations that migrate from older Sun environment can achieve 7 times greater performance gains without expanding a server footprint. There's lots of choices out there for you for every system on Windows and Intel with SQL Server. And it is enterprise ready and has been for a number of years now. Again, we have lots of benchmarks to prove that. But one of the new features in 2012 that we have a lot of customers excited about, in fact, we get a lot of calls where people want to move to SQL Server specifically for this one feature, and that's this always-on high availability and disaster recovery. So this is a kind of a really nice, well-packaged, concise, full-bodied feature from SQL Server that wasn't always so obvious in the past, is how to put together all of your HA and DR in one area. So always on is that. And it's also enterprise ready in that you can use the new, more energy efficient hardware and lower your consumption of energy with the same performance or greater. So for an example here, we talk about that the Spark has twice the power rating of the Intel E7 processors, and that there's a potential reduction of system administration costs of 73%, cooling and power costs of 71%, support costs of 63%, and new server hardware costs of 77%. So these are obviously great numbers and great reasons to move to SQL Server 2012. Another thing customers talk to us a lot about is Oracle RAC. So one of the problems with Oracle RAC, even though customers come to us and want to know how that will affect their solution in 2012, is that Oracle RAC is actually very complex and difficult for customers to implement. And we find that it actually isn't used that much out in the real world. So out in the wild, we find that there's only about 5% of all Oracle customers that actually deploy on RAC. So the point here is, SQL Server not having the equivalent of RAC per se shouldn't be a limiter and shouldn't be an inhibitor to you. Also, SQL Server now, since 2012, has been over and over again recognized as the most secure of all major database platforms. It has the fewest number of reported vulnerabilities, just 72 from 2002 to 2012. That's kind of incredible. 72 is really small. During the same time, Oracle had 483 security vulnerabilities and all the patches that go along with them. And IBM DB2 had 163 issues. So well recognized as the most secure platform. So if we compare TCO again, if you look at, I hope people can see this this chart, but you can see that the Enterprise Edition of SQL Server by itself costs much less than the Enterprise Edition of Oracle. But it also comes with all of these things out of the box, and this has always been a very strong point of SQL Server. So Enterprise Edition comes with table partitioning, compression, OLAP. And with Oracle, a lot of these features then have to be purchased separately. And not only are they purchased separately, but they don't necessarily have the same feel and integration that all Microsoft products are known for. So Oracle and SQL pricing based on server cores. You can see the huge difference here between Oracle 11G R2 and SQL Server 2012. And this makes a big difference because even just a few years ago we were talking about 4 cores, 8 cores, but now we're up in the 32 and more. Just your smaller machine might have 20 core out of the box. So this is an important piece and becomes more important as these machines get more and more processors. Some pricing details with multiple cores and enterprise add-ons. So if you need table partitioning and data compression, which almost any large enterprise system is going to need those. If you're going into architecting any large real enterprise system, you're going to need to start with those in mind. Then you can see the difference then again for 8 CPUs, 4 cores, what the price would be for Oracle, and there's no extra cost for SQL Server. If you add in OLAP on your largest machine, then again you're looking at $750,000 additional cost for Oracle and nothing for SQL Server. So this is a 5 times price increase without 5 times better performance. This is kind of an important issue too when we think about resources. So it's determined that one DBA can manage about 65 plus mission critical SQL Server databases, but only 15 with Oracle databases. And this comes back to this main point that although, there's 2 main issues about why people like to move to SQL Server. Obviously, cost is one of the biggest ones, and that's very evident right from the licensing cost. But this resource cost is really important as well. Again, your people get to work your business, not your product. So it's felt that a DBA can only manage about 15 mission-critical Oracle databases. So not only do you need more databases, but we find those, or DBAs, sorry, we find those DBAs have to have more specific skills, and they tend to cost more. So this is about $1,600 per year per database for SQL, and about $7,000 per year per database for Oracle. So now we're going to talk a little bit in depth about a particular migration that we just recently did. Again, this is for the Kentucky Cabinet of Health and Family Services. This is a government organization that provides health care, human services, including Medicaid. So that kind of gives you a feel for how critical it is and how many users it would have. It's one of the largest agencies in the government and has over 8,000 full and part-time employees. So they wanted to move forward critical applications, and the reason they wanted to do it was to reduce licensing and operation costs, to improve performance and scalability, and enhance manageability, all 3 key drivers that we find customers come to us constantly about. So Microsoft recommended to them that they use us to conduct a migration assessment. This particular product was built in-house in .NET. There were many versions of Oracle in production, and a number of third-party code generation components. There was a lot of sensitive personal data, and obviously security is incredibly important when you talk about health services and Medicaid. Embedded PL SQL in the application layer, something that we see quite often, obviously. And then it had to be high availability and performance. And I'm going to just come off to a little side here, but because this always reminds me about what happened, excuse me, what happened recently with the healthcare sites, the government healthcare site, where this is the perfect example where they needed to do performance and scalability analysis before that product went real. And this was exactly the same scenario with the Cabinet of Health and Family Services here. It's got to be uptime. It's got to be able to support all the people it needs to support. And they also needed to get a really good feel for hardware sizing. Again, this is the critical thing people come to us. We want to move to SQL Server. We have no idea what kind of hardware we need to put that on. And we know and hope that it's going to be smaller hardware, but we don't know what it is. So this is always part of one of our deliverables. So this is our methodology. The first thing we do is we go in and qualify and vision. What is it you're trying to accomplish? Are you actually ready to engage in that right now? Then we start an analysis and assessment. Part of that is actually the SQL Server Migration Assistant tool, but we also look in depth at processes, people who are connected, what the impact on code is, what the impact on DBA jobs. Then we start the actual planning of and development of that migration. And that usually consists of a database schema and data conversion. There's always some application component, a data access layer, something that needs to be converted, and a lot of times that code is not going to be seen by the SSMA tool. We have to think about the operational administration conversions. There's also ETL jobs that might need to be addressed. Security and user conversions, and then functional testings. And one of the other things that we do is we monitor the system for a while to see actually who's using those databases. In the past, we've seen a lot of times that customers will migrate a database to a new environment. It goes perfectly, but the day that they cut over, they've got people calling constantly saying, I can't get to the system, because there wasn't an analysis done on who's actually using, who's connecting through Excel, who's connecting through reporting services. So then we go through to the core migration process, taking different units at a time, optimizing them, stress testing them, stabilizing them. And then this has actually been left off of this slide, but we also have a particular tool we use, which is an upgrade assistant that helps us to do some mini load testing to ensure that we're able to, this is an upgrade assistant for from other database systems, which allows us to see if we are getting the same results. And then we go and deploy the product first. And then after that, there's obviously monitoring and review time. So the detail of that, qualification and envisioning what we see, the deliverables are a document with stakeholders and some guides for how to go forward. Critical to success is to make sure that everyone's on board, and that includes development, QA, and your financial sponsors. We then do the analysis and assessment, and again, I want to just talk a little bit here about something we do that a lot of other companies don't do, is we look at things more than just running the SSMA tool. We look at the code. We look for embedded code. We look for design patterns. The goal is not to get you an Oracle product on SQL. The goal is to migrate you to a SQL platform with a highly performant and scalable product on SQL. And that involves more than just changing the code on the database schema. Developing and testing, stress testing and stabilization. We then go through deployment, and again you can see some of our deliverables there are the configuration documentation, the operational guides. We have a lot of run books that we provide, and then the final deliverables, and hopefully you end at the end with a happy customer. So during the discovery, we have this very complex questionnaire that we ask people to fill out, and then we start monitoring and start gathering a bunch of metrics that help us to determine a lot about what's going on in the system right then. We talk about how many databases to migrate, how many can you migrate, what's in scope, how many applications to migrate. We then perform that analysis. That includes Oracle traces. We use the SSMA tool. We grep through your code for known issues with syntax. And then we will come back and recommend an approach, identify the low and high risk migration candidates, and talk about mitigation for those high risk migration candidates, document that, and then give you a migration roadmap. That usually also then will include a high-level project plan that you should be able to take, and then if you use us to implement it, to go ahead and drill into that, including your own timelines for your own schedule and your own resources. So again, discover, analyze, and recommend. You come away with a migration roadmap and a project plan. And this is what a project plan high level would be. When you start the project, and again, if you do the project with us, then you start out with a detailed project plan. But we usually take about 2 weeks for our first assessment. This is very common. So there's a lot of data collection, trace collection. We do SME interviews. This is really critical. Again, because we're trying to give you a performant and scalable SQL product, not just an Oracle product that's been hacked onto SQL. So we go in and talk to the SMEs. What are some of the issues that you have? What are the design patterns that are being used? Are you using cursors? Things like that that have to be changed. And we try to make this as the least impact as possible, but it's very critical to the success of the product. And then we run some different migration tools and then come back and give you the recommendations. So this is typically what the migration might look like. Again, those 2 weeks for the beginning part, making sure everyone's on board, you're in a place to be able to do this migration, and the analysis and understanding of what that migration will look like. Then 1 to 6 months generally for development testing, and then 14 to 30 days for the end. Now that 1 to 6 months really depends obviously on the customer's own timeline. We work in a very collaborative process with all of our customers because we've got to work together as a team to make it be successful, but also you have your own timelines, your own resource contentions. So being able to understand how we can get to success within that time, within your framework, is a really important part of the process. So the name of the product that we migrated for the Kentucky Cabinet of Health and Family Services called eKasper. And when we did the initial migration assessment from the SSMA tool, you could see that how many objects there were in each of these databases, how many sequence IDs. So we come out with this information, which leads us then as well to some conversion statistics that the tool gives us. Now I want to make a really important point here. The tool is a really great tool and it does a lot of work for you. And if you're not familiar with that tool, by the way, you can look for it online. It's called the SQL Server Migration Assistant. Very good tool. But it only covers code that is discoverable. And most legacy enterprise systems have code that's all over the place. So we'll have code that's in the database, we'll have code that's in the schema, we'll have code that's in a data abstraction layer, we'll have code that's out in different kinds of reports, and then again you'll find you've got some nice enterprise objects where everything is encapsulated nicely, but then you also have your JavaScript for those different kinds of really quick applications that people put up. But we find that a huge amount of Java code is all inline SQL. This tool won't tell you that. So it's a good piece. It's a good tool to tell you, but if you use that solely for scheduling out and resourcing your migration, you're going to be in trouble. You've got to include all the other analysis as well. Then we go through and we do a complexion rating for each of these conversions. So high might mean rewriting complete code. A lot of times if there's a third-party product that needs to be completely rewritten, it may not be supported or you may not have the coding or whatever it is. That's a high level. Medium is that there's changing some of the code, but also we may have to change a design pattern. And low is just simply changing some of the functions with Oracle SQL functions. And as you can see on the right, for eKasper, we found that only 3% of the code was highly complex. And 56% was pretty straightforward, and that tends to be true generally. A lot of times also it depends on whether a company has a data abstraction layer. If they don't, it tends to be a little bit more complex. If they do, then all the code comes in one place and that makes it a little easier. So when that tool is run, the SSMA tool comes back and gives us some of these errors. And we then have a complexity based on our knowledge of what you have to do to solve and mitigate those errors in SQL Server, and we've got a whole database of all these errors and all the amount of times and solutions that have been applied for those. That gives us the ability to programmatically give you some complexity ratings for this, and that comes really from years of experience. So in the eKasper, these were some of the key application errors. areas. There were a lot of Oracle types, dynamic SQL, huge amount of dynamic SQL, which a lot of times is the case. You're not going to find that again from the SSMA tool. And this is an example of what a sample conversion might look like. So we get, we have a store procedure that needs to be replaced. This was a sys_send_mail, and then we would rewrite and create a new procedure for that. This was a low complexity, and there's something that we see quite often. Here's another example. This execute immediate is common, and this is how we rewrite that. Generally with execute in execute SQL. This is a medium complexity. And then we have a completely unsupported SQL clause, which here's an example of what we did here, where we used this CTE common table expression to completely rewrite this. Now, we do actually have over in 2012, so that function is now available in 2012, but it doesn't necessarily perform as well as a CTE is. So we not only just migrate it, but we're looking at for a performant migration. And then the next thing we do is we go and tier all these servers. So there's lots of complexities and to this matrix of work you've got to do. There's the complexities of the code. There's the complexities of the testing and the resource management, both our resources and your resources. But then there's also different kinds of servers, and we need to tier them on how we're going to be able to migrate those. So we sit down and spend a lot of time with you on how do we migrate and how do we categorize each of the servers that need to be moved so that we can put together a very concise but doable project plan. And this ended up being the total migration effort for this project. So you can see that most of the hours were in medium. Very few high-level migration risks. And then the total man days, we come up in the total hours for that migration. This is then the implementation workflow. So now we've done all the coding and we've scripted out everything and have run this migration in practice many, many times. This is the part then of how do we implement the actual implementation. How do we plan for that? So we plan for the deployment, identify that impact, start provisioning that server and hardware and testing on that server and hardware over and over and over again. We set up the database environment, start doing load and stress testing as well. Configure the security, set up the objects, implement replication, plan a cutover, and then go through, again, the whole practice and go through design the whole rollback process. What do we do if it doesn't work? How do we go back? And then there's a whole piece that's about just even communicating with your users, preparing them for the fact that their IPs may change or may not change, or the connection streams may change, but to ensure that everybody's on board and we practice this over before we actually implement the cutover. And a big piece here that we focus on is trying to help you to develop and mature your own service management processes. We want all of this to be codable, repeatable, scripted. So here are some of our migration case studies. A lot of big systems. Again, at the end, these were all as performant or more performant and less expensive than the corresponding Oracle system. Some of our migration customers. I just want to make a quick point about ASCAP, because this was very interesting. ASCAP was running off mainframe DB2, and when we migrated that to SQL Server, it was running 4 to 5 times faster than it ran off on the mainframe, and we were getting response times of 4 milliseconds. It was just really a beautiful system, really, really scaled and performed nicely. Okay, so that went kind of quickly, but at this point I'm going to hand this back over to John.
All right, thank you so much, Sharon. I know now that you've seen a little bit about the reason that companies are looking at making the move from Oracle DB2 and Sybase onto SQL Server 2012, and you want to start looking at how can we benefit the same way, we have several programs available to help you. The first is with any service or anything related to any service that Scalability Experts offers, we always have a free phone consultation available with one of our architects. So if you just want to discuss, hey, how would this look in my environment, what are the potential next steps, by all means, send us an email to info@scalabilityexperts.com, and we can set that up for you. In addition, we also offer business value assessments so that you can see the actual dollars and cents of making a migration like this happen. We can offer a technical migration assessment, which is like what we did here for CHFS, where we're evaluating the actual plan for making the migration, but also determining the effort level and cost associated with pulling the trigger and making the move from Oracle to SQL Server. We also have funding available from our hardware partners and from Microsoft to help make this less painful on your pocketbook. So in general, the first 2 to 4 weeks is something that we can subsidize or completely pay for out of partner funding so that you guys can take a good look at what sort of impact it's going to have to your company. And I would encourage everyone to do that. In addition, we offer turnkey implementation services, or we can work with your team. And we also offer staff augmentation. So if you want to put one of our experts on your team to just give you the extra expertise and the extra bandwidth to complete a project like this, we can do that as well. So again, if you have any questions about this, you want to set up a time to talk and learn more, send us an email at info@scalabilityexperts.com. And can you go to the next slide, Sharon? All right, and that brings us towards the end of our webinar. We did finish a little bit early, but that's good because it gives us plenty of time for Q&A. On the top of your live meeting window, there is a object listed as Q&A. Everyone is muted, so please use that to enter your questions, and then as they come in, I will read them out to Sharon so that she can respond to them. All right, and we do have our first question in. This is from Saravanan. Does SQL 2012 provide equivalent to Oracle RAT and Oracle ASM?
Oh, that's a really good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. ASM, no, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not the same results aren't achievable. But yeah, that's all I can say on that.
Okay, and Sarah Ivana, I'd encourage you to reach out to us. We can probably get you more detailed answers as to what you're specifically looking for, and give you the insight and information you need. Okay, we have our
we have an infrastructure specialist who does actually know the answers to all of that. So.
Okay, perfect. Our next question is from Leo. Is the SSMA tool free of cost?
Yes, it is. It's a great tool. And you can find it and download it from the Microsoft main web page.
Okay. And then we have a question in from Charles. Where did the DBA ratios you mentioned come from? And do you want me to handle that one, Sharon?
Yeah.
Okay. And Charles, I'll respond to that. Several months ago, Scalability Experts, in partnership with HP, wrote a white paper where a lot of this cost information came from. And there is a list of several sources on the back. So what I'd ask is to be able to email that to you. So please send me an email to info@scalabilityexperts.com, and I'll send you the white paper with the full list of references and links. Does that answer your question, Charles? Yeah. And while we wait for Charles to respond, we do have another question from Deepak. How does the ease of performance tuning on SQL compare to that of Oracle?
Oh, that's a really good question. So what I have found, excuse me, and I talk with the Oracle developers about this all the time as well, is that at first people were really worried because they didn't feel there were many buttons to turn on SQL. But SQL Server had the ability to do its own sort of learning on the job, as you would, as well as still have some of those buttons to turn. So it actually is easier to do performance tuning. But I do want to give you one little hint about that. So when SQL Server 7.0 came out, it was completely rewritten, and this was an advantage that SQL had over most of the other relational database systems out there, because they still had to have a lot of legacy approaches. So, for instance, cursors and the use of cursors for server cursors is kind of a more procedural approach, a more legacy approach. So when they were able to redesign and rebuild SQL from the bottom up, they did it around the relational model, which means that the optimizer then was built around the relational model. So SQL Server has the ability to learn a lot from any of the relational model primary keys, foreign keys that you implement in the database. The optimizer will use really well to give you really good plans. So this is something that was a key design goal with SQL Server, and it's been proved over and over again that SQL Server will perform better with less work than Oracle does. There's a lot of work that has to go into Oracle to get the same benefit. We like to say that if you design it correctly with your data model and your access patterns, that you can get about 80% of your performance out of the box, and you only have to work then the anomalies, which is about 20%. On Oracle, it's felt that people have to work all of the code, that you always have to be tuning and monitoring and watching your code, where on SQL Server, it's more you just work at kind of that 20% that's always there. Does that answer your question?
Okay. And I do have a question. This one came in by email from a late joiner. Jill was asking, is this webinar recorded, and can we receive a webinar replay? The answer is yes, this webinar is being recorded. It'll probably take a few days for the marketing department to have that edited and then posted up on our blog, but at that point we will be sending an email to all the attendees and registrants of this email so that you will be able to watch the webinar replay if you missed parts of it. Okay. And then we have some other questions. I should be closing these out as they come in. From Prasad. Does SQL licensing you have described contain SQL databases for external customers or internal customers within the same organization?
Oh, okay, so that's an interesting question. Contain databases for external or internal. I'm not sure that I know the answer to that, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know that licensing question. I think that you'd have, well, maybe we can look online and find that for you by the end of the Q&A. We just have to look online to the Microsoft site. Okay.
And Prasad, if we're unable to find it by the end of the webinar, please send me an email at info@scalabilityexperts.com, and I'll work to get that information to you. All right, and we have another question. This one also from Leo. Is high availability and disaster recovery free of cost with SQL Server? What is rack equivalent in SQL Server?
So always on, well, there's all different kinds of HA and BR that are available, all different licensing levels or editions of SQL Server. So it depends on what edition you have as what solution. 2012, our top solution is always on, and the key thing about always on is readable replicas. That's the big win for always on. You don't have any servers just sitting there waiting for failover. They're readable replicas. That's available for free in the Enterprise Edition. So when we talk about RAC, this is kind of a long discussion because RAC is used for a lot of different things. If you're using RAC for scale out, then SQL Server does that through architecture. The product itself does not have a scale out RAC equivalent. So talk to us about it. We've got lots of ways to get there. Most people don't even use it. And we'd love to have that discussion with how to make SQL, how to accomplish what you're trying to do with SQL Server.
Okay, and we do have another question in here. This one might need to be taken offline as well. But from Sarah Vanan, since SQL 2008 R2, Microsoft has increased the license cost per CPU, core level similar to Oracle that caused TCO to be almost similar to Oracle. Your thoughts, Sharon?
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't say almost, and if you notice though that the white paper that we were talking about was done with 2012. Now, this is a really complex question, as I'm sure you know, because it completely depends on who you are, what you've been using, if you're grandfathered in, what's underlying. So it's so complex. It's actually really hard to understand that I'm not going to. We have to look at your situation and look at Microsoft licensing for your particular situation. But I think your main point is that TCO is better, or the difference is not as big. We feel it still is, and from the white paper, we think it still is. The initial cost has gone up some, though. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Okay, from Charles, I thought always-on readable replicas only work for synchronous replication, but our data center is over 400 miles away. How do we do this?
Again, complex question, and you're right, it's for synchronous replication. Again, this is kind of an architecture question. It depends on what you're trying to do with that. If your replica is only read only, there's lots of other solutions. There's replication, there's peer-to-peer replication. So really depends again on what your scenario is. It's not something that can be answered just like that.
Okay. And then from Deepak, we have another question. Is two-way replication between production and DR available on SQL Server out of the box, similar to Oracle Golden Gate?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and we will give it another minute to see if any other questions come in. And while we wait, we do have another question in from Charles. We need DR without data loss. Can we get that with always on?
Yes, absolutely. That's the point.
How can it do what? And another question from Charles. How if it can't do it async?
Oh, well, I mean, again, depending on your scenario, if you can't use synchronous, then that's a different situation. If you have to use asynchronous, then maybe you can get some data loss. But the question is, can you use always on and not get data loss? Yes. If you have other different kind of constraints, then we have to put together other kinds of solutions for you.
Okay, a question from Joe. Do you work on scale to Azure?
Okay, and I'm going to ask you to just tell me a little bit more what you're trying to ask here. Do we work on how to get scale on Azure databases, Azure VMs, or migrate to scale to Azure? So maybe if you can tell me a little bit more what you're trying to ask there.
migrate to Azure?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is, I mean, this is kind of a tough area because there's lots of great things being said about it. We love Azure. I love Azure. But it does require some thought about what you're trying to accomplish, because there is some architectural work if you're trying to use Azure SQL or actual SQL Azure, or if you're trying to run SQL Server on VMs. Two different ways to address that. But we do a lot of work in that area. We're really good in that area, and we've done some things for Microsoft, in fact, in that area. So absolutely. And there's Microsoft has a lot of interested companies that are migrating to Azure. So we're a very good partner to work with on that.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up question from Charles. And unfortunately, I don't have his previous question here. But he asks, will I need a third-party product?
And again, I'm not sure. I think Charles may have been talking about DR. And again, Charles, I really recommend that you maybe send us an email with your specific scenario. A lot of these questions are not really just yes/no questions. So maybe just send us an email, and we'll absolutely follow up with you. Tell us about what your scenario is and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And Charles, I'd recommend let's set up just a brief phone call, or we can really dig into it. Okay, we have another question in from Noel, if I'm saying this right. Can a readable mirrored database and always on be turned into writable as part of a DR solution?
Afterwards, it can. It cannot be. I mean, if you fail over, so you're actually in DR, it can, but otherwise not. Now, the big thing though about always on, and why we were excited about that, is that you couldn't even. Nor all the other solutions that we've had before, nothing was readable. So everything was always just sitting there, and you couldn't use it. You just waited for it. So it's a really exciting new feature, but it's not writable until you actually turn it into your new production database.
Okay, does that answer your question, Noel? Okay, and we'll give it another minute, see if another question comes in. While we're waiting, I just want to say if people have questions specifically around, there's a lot of questions around HA and DR, then, this is the kind of thing that we do as our consultancy, is to contact us. These are complex issues, not easily answered in just questions. So, feel free to contact us about this kind of stuff. It's not always so obvious with SQL Server, unfortunately. Yep. All right. Well, we don't have any more questions coming in, so I wanted to wrap this up by thanking you all for attending. I will be emailing out the link to view the webinar and replay if there's anything that you missed. Any other questions, please send them to info@scalabilityexperts.com. We'd be happy to hold a no-cost 30-minute phone meeting. We can put you on the line with some of our architects like Sharon and really dive into your problems and see what we at Scalability Experts can do to help. So unless there's anything else, thank you guys, and we appreciate your time. You guys take care.